You give me $100. I promise to give you $150 in 45 days. You think I'm crazy. Then your friend does it. He gives me $100. 45 days later, I give him $150. Now your friend thinks I'm a genius. So he tells you, bro, this guy actually pays. And suddenly, you give me $10,000. Here's the problem. I never invested your money. I just used somebody else's money to make you think I did. And by the time anyone figured it out, thousands of people had already handed me their savings. This wasn't a modern crypto scam. This happened in 1920. And the man's name was Charles Ponzi. Boston, 1920. Charles Ponzi wanted to get rich. Fast. He wasn't a Wall Street billionaire. He wasn't a financial genius. He was an Italian immigrant in Boston, with an idea involving something called international reply coupons. The idea sounded clever. Buy the coupons cheaply in countries where currencies were weaker, then redeem them in the United States for postage worth more. Profit from the difference. On paper, it sounded legitimate. So Ponzi did what every good salesman does. He made the opportunity sound even better. 50% return in 45 days, or double your money in 90. And people listened. Then they invested. And something happened that made Ponzi incredibly dangerous. The first investors actually got paid. Imagine you're one of them. You give Ponzi $100. A few weeks later, you walk out with $150. You didn't read a complicated financial report. You didn't understand postal coupons. You don't care. You just made money. So you tell your brother tells his neighbor, the neighbor tells everyone. And suddenly, Ponzi doesn't have a marketing problem anymore. His investors are doing the marketing for him. Here's where the magic disappears. Imagine 100 people give Ponzi $100 each. That's $10,000. Ponzi promises them all profits. But instead of investing the money, he waits for another group of people. They bring in $20,000. Ponzi takes some of that money and gives it to the first group. The first group leaves happy. They think, my investment worked. But it didn't. Their money simply came from someone who arrived later. That's a Ponzi scheme. New money makes old money look profitable. And now, something very important happens. The people who got paid want to invest even more, and they bring their friends. So the scam grows. Not because the investment is making money, but because belief is bringing in money. That is the entire engine. And Ponzi was about to discover just how far that engine could go. The National Archives records that over roughly 8 months, Ponzi took in about $15 million, while early investors were paid using money from later investors. By July 1920, Ponzi wasn't some random guy anymore. He was famous. The Boston Post put him on the front page. And the next time Ponzi showed up at his office, there was a problem, a very profitable problem. There were thousands of people waiting for him. People carrying cash, people carrying checks, people carrying their savings. They weren't running away from Ponzi. They were running toward him because everyone had heard the same thing. Ponzi pays. And why wouldn't they believe it? People had already been paid. The Boston Post's coverage helped create a frenzy around Ponzi, with contemporary descriptions of huge crowds waiting outside his office. Ponzi was now sitting at the center of a machine. Money came in. Some money went out. The people who got paid told everyone. Everyone brought more money. And Ponzi got richer. But there was one tiny problem. The machine needed to keep growing. Imagine I owe you $100. Easy, I pay you. Now imagine I owe 1,000 people $100. That's $100,000. Now imagine 10,000 people. That's $1 million. The bigger the scheme gets, the more money it needs. And because the money isn't coming from actual profits, there is only one solution. Find more investors. More. And more. And more. Forever. But you can't find an infinite number of people. Eventually, someone wants their money back. Then someone else. Then hundreds. And suddenly, the scammer isn't looking for investors. He's looking for cash. That's the fatal weakness of a Ponzi scheme. It can survive almost anything, except people wanting their money at the same time. Investor.gov identifies this constant need for new money as the core weakness of Ponzi schemes. When recruitment slows or withdrawals surge, the scheme tends to collapse. And Ponzi was about to find out what happens when the machine stops. People started asking questions. Where were the profits coming from? Could the postal coupon business really produce the returns Ponzi promised? Investigators started looking. Newspapers started digging. And the story began falling apart. The authorities found something particularly embarrassing. Ponzi had been hiding his past. He had served time in prison before. And once the Boston Post published his criminal history, the confidence holding the whole thing together started to disappear. The National Archives records that the Post's investigation into his past helped trigger the collapse. And once people stopped believing, they wanted their money. Ponzi couldn't pay everyone. The machine collapsed. His empire was finished. Thousands of people had lost money. And a new phrase entered the financial vocabulary: Ponzi scheme. You'd think humanity would remember the lesson. It didn't. 88 years later, New York. Meet Bernie Madoff. Now, Madoff didn't look like Ponzi. He wasn't standing in a crowded Boston office. He was a respected Wall Street figure. He had been in the financial industry for decades. He had wealthy clients, a prestigious reputation, and something Ponzi could only dream about: an enormous amount of trust. People gave Madoff their money. Then they received statements showing they were getting richer, year after year. Everything looked professional. Everything looked legitimate. Except the trades weren't really happening. Madoff's operation was running the same basic machine. Money from newer investors was used to satisfy earlier investors. But now, the illusion came with computers, account statements, and Wall Street credibility. The SEC's investigation later found that more than 4,000 investment advisory accounts purported to hold about $65 billion at the collapse, while the firm actually had only about $300 million in assets. The numbers were enormous. The lie was enormous. But the trick? Still incredibly simple. Then everything changed. December 2008. The financial crisis had hit. Markets were crashing. Investors were scared. And scared investors do something that is deadly to a Ponzi scheme. They ask, "Give me my money." Madoff needed billions. But the money wasn't there. He couldn't keep paying everyone. The illusion finally ran out of cash. Madoff admitted the investment business was a fraud. The SEC said he described it as essentially one giant Ponzi scheme, and said he had been paying some investors with the principal of others. 3 months later, he pleaded guilty to 11 federal felonies. Then came the sentence: 150 years in prison. The largest Ponzi scheme the world had seen was over. But there was one question left. How did they believe him? This is the part that matters. Because the victims weren't all idiots. Some were wealthy. Some were experienced. Some were sophisticated investors. So how did they miss it? Because Madoff didn't sell them a spreadsheet. He sold them certainty. Your statement says you're making money. Your friend is invested. Your neighbor is invested. Everyone seems happy. And then you get a return. Now, you don't just believe the story. You have evidence. Except the evidence is part of the story. Madoff's employees created fictitious trades and account statements to make non-existent transactions look real. And that's the terrifying part. The scam doesn't need to look fake. It needs to look boringly legitimate. So how do you spot one? Someone promises huge returns with almost no risk? Bad. Returns that are suspiciously consistent? Bad. A strategy nobody can clearly explain? Bad. You can't verify where the money is invested? Very bad. And if they suddenly make it difficult for you to withdraw your own money, run. Because real investments can lose money. Markets can crash. Returns can change. But when someone promises extraordinary returns with extraordinary certainty, ask one question. Not, how much will I make? Ask, where does the money actually come from? Because if the answer is new investors, then you're not looking at an investment. You're looking at a machine that needs someone else to arrive after you. Charles Ponzi, Bernie Madoff. Different century, different technology, different clothes, same machine. Convince people you're making money. Pay some early investors. Let them convince everyone else. Bring in new money. Use it to keep the illusion alive. Repeat. 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 Until eventually, there aren't enough new people. And that's what makes the Ponzi scheme so fascinating. It doesn't create wealth. It creates the appearance of wealth. And the appearance can survive for years, as long as people keep believing it. Because the scam isn't really powered by money. It's powered by trust. And once trust disappears, the money disappears with it. So if someone ever promises you huge returns, almost no risk, and a secret system that somehow always works, don't ask them how rich you'll become. Ask them one simple question. Where does the money come from? Because if they can't answer, you already know the answer. It's coming from the next person. And if there is no next person, there is no profit. There is only the bill. That's a Ponzi scheme.